Hey everyone, Ashley May and Mike Beer here with the Daily Racing Forum, taking a look at the race of the day for the Daily Racing Forum this Saturday out at Tampa Bay Downs. It's race 11 of 12 on their program, and it's the Grade 3 Tampa Bay Derby with Derby points on the line. And before we show the slate here, Mike, we'll take a look at a promo that's going on here in the DRF store. This is part of kind of one of the races on the road to the Derby, but there is a special package that does contain past performances for 10 events, clock reports, betting strategies, and more. And you'll save 37% if you decide to go with this bundle. Certainly check out shop.drf.com to take advantage of this great offer. We talked about the road to the Derby. Obviously, it does go through Tampa. This is their signature race. And just a field of 7 enter this Grade 3 event at 1 mile and 1/16 on the main track. But, Mike, it's an interesting one. I feel like there's a ton of speed in here. And then outside of that, there's 2 big names on paper in the form of Chancer McPatrick, who obviously has had some time off due to an ankle injury, and then Patch Adams, who didn't fare the best last time out on the stretch out.
Yeah, they're going to be the 2 favorites in here. I guess there are also at least questions, minor questions about both of them too, Ashley. I mean, Chancer McPatrick, is he going to be able to rebound out of the Breeders' Cup where, let's face it, he just didn't really fire a good shot that day. And as far as Patch Adams goes, is the 98 buyer he earned breaking his maiden, is that legit? Because if it's legit, he's supposed to be really tough in here.
We'll take a look at the Timeform US pace projections here for the Tampa Bay Derby. And I said it, I think it's going to be quick. Our friends at Timeform also think that Brodeur stretched out last time out at Oakland Park and showed that forward gate speed. He could be part of the mix. Owen Almighty, I think he has to go. He actually still has to do, in my opinion, prove himself as a 2-turn horse. And then you mentioned Patch Adams. But with the speed from the 1 and the 4, it does seem like Patch Adams may be part of the mix, or he may be stalking with the outside draw.
Yeah, we'll see. He's drawn outside here, so at least it'll give his rider some options. You expect him to come out of the gate running and try to be forward, but you'd also feel like he could probably just take a tracking trip if he had to. I feel like the 4 is going to make the lead in this race, and we'll see how Irad decides to play it with the 1 from the rail, because he's fast, actually, but he's a very handy horse. I don't think Irad's going out there looking to get this horse hooked up into a duel.
And then note the LP, the late pace flag, is attached to the 3 Hill Road, who was able to close on pretty slow fractions in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile to finish 3rd. We'll kick it off, though, with the number 1, Owen Almighty, and we'll show the prep for this locally at Tampa, the Sam F. Davis. And he does a lot right here. I just think he gets beat by a horse that was a little bit better on February 8th in the form of John Hancock. And I also wonder if the fact that Owen Almighty's on the outside, John Hancock's on the inside, with him engaging with this horse, if that gave John Hancock a little bit more ammo to fight back on the inside to get the win. But I mentioned I still think he has to prove himself at 2 turns based on what we've seen. But that effort last time out gives me a little bit more hope that he can pull it off.
He ran pretty well in there. It was a race that was just dominated right up on the lead between him and the winner. They were 1-2 around the track, and nobody else really did anything. But they were probably just just the 2 best horses in that race, actually. So I don't think they necessarily deserve to be have points taken away because they were up there the entire way. I'm with you as far as the distance goes with Owen Almighty. Especially off of that race, I'm not sure that more distance actually works for him. You saw in that replay, sort of surged that one final time at the 16th pole to get his head in front. It looked like maybe he was going to get the job done, and then he just got outfinished at the end. I guess the flip side of that is maybe John Hancock's just really good.
Yeah, we'll see. That was a horse that was stretching out from a 1-turn 6 furlong event, going right into those waters, and was able to handle the stretch out just fine for trainer Brad Cox. The 2, Chancer McPatrick, he is short price on the morning line, but we'll take a look at his effort too back. It came at the Belmont at Aqueduct meet and the Champagne going a mile, and he was last early. He's going to be able to close in here on Tip Top Thomas, who is in the lead at this point in the race. And I think what he's able to pull off here is pretty impressive. He was able to keep the win streak alive. He obviously didn't fire at all in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, and now he has to kind of work off the setback. We haven't seen him yet as a 3-year-old. But I do think it's interesting to know that blinkers go on. I know a lot of people don't like when the blinkers go on for the big race, but I think it's something that he's going to really need on Saturday.
Yeah, that is one of the things that you definitely want to take note of, though. All 3 of the sort of late runners in this race, they're all adding blinkers for this race, which is sort of an odd occurrence. We'll see if it makes any difference with Chancer McPatrick. His calling card as a 2-year-old, especially in the 2 Grade 1 wins, was just a huge finish from off the pace through the stretch. I mean, he has a really powerful stretch kick when he's right. What do you make of his Breeders' Cup, Ashley? I mean, I can't say that I particularly liked him in that race anyway. Was it a matter of him not really stretching out effectively first time around 2 turns. I know there wasn't a lot of pace in there, but this horse, he basically did no running in there.
I feel like we did a pick 5 video and we both didn't like him that day. So I like him here, but I didn't like him that day. I just think it's maybe looking at how he was going into that race. I had some reservations. He was also going to a mile and a 16th at Del Mar around 2 turns. There's just little things about him that I wasn't sold on, but to me, he's working well. We mentioned he had a minor setback, and I think for me, the selling point really is blinkers on, but you bring up a great point. He's not the only one with the equipment change, and directly to his outside is one of those horses. That's Hill Road, now in the barn of Chad Brown. This horse was, I guess, completely disrespected in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, and I think rightfully so. 2 turf races, comes here, has to stretch out from that most recent effort at 7 Ace, and actually is able to close on what is not a fast pace when you consider that they did go 47-4 to the half. It's a good effort. Citizen Bull, obviously, we know what he has gone on to do. Gaming has had some tough starts since then that include the Southwest, include the race at Los Al, but I don't know what to do with him. He's getting blinkers on. He's now gone to the new barn. There's just something about him. I do think he's going to be over bet here for one, based on the 89 buyer speed figure. And to me, he's probably more intriguing if he's a big price. And talked about there's a lot of speed in here. We talk about the Sam F. Davis Day speed held. I don't know how far you want to be back, and I don't know what the equipment change is really going to do for him.
Yeah, I'm going to mostly agree with that. I mean, at a relatively short price in here, I'm probably just not that interested. And I'll just sort of make him prove that he's as good. And listen, he did run well at the Breeders' Cup, but I'll just make him prove that it's not like it was a total shock that he ran pretty well there, because he did really look good winning his career debut. He has a huge dirt pedigree, so the surface switch wasn't really supposed to be an issue for him. I just feel like when I watch it, and granted, give him credit, the pace wasn't fast, and he came from last, and he really finished well in that race. He also was given a great closer's trip from Rispoli, he just sat back, he saved all the ground, he never went wide on the turn, and it all worked out for him, and he came running at the end. I'm going to make this horse prove that he's this good, but won't be surprised when he is.
Before Brodeur here, son of Nyquist, who's been able to win those last 2, and similar story, went from 6 furlongs to a mile and a 16th, as we talked about maybe some other horses, the John Hancocks of the world, where they're able to stretch out around 2 turns for the first time. Now, he had to do it in front end fashion once again. His number actually took a little bit of a hit from an 81 to a 74, and I'm not necessarily sold on what was behind him in that field as you look at horses that have come back and what they've been able to do. Hasn't been a ton, but I thought he was game. And I think the other thing is when you look at his maiden score, it was a muddy track. This was a wet, fast track, a little bit of a drier track than he faced, and he still handled it. I think he's a wild card. You talked about it, Mike. You think he's probably getting the lead in here. Can he hang around? I don't think he's as good as some others in here, but at what's going to be a price on the board, I do think there's some intrigue behind him, at least in the exotics.
I agree. Took a long look at him. I could talk myself into using him at least underneath in here. I know he's not fast on the way in, and you do have to reckon with the fact that his 2 wins are on sort of wet, sealed racetracks. So we'll see if that moved him up a little bit. I still think he ran well on both of the wins. I know they're not fast. Man, was he game. It's not like he got loose either time. They really made this horse work, and he was just not letting horses get by him at the end. There's something there with this horse, Ashley. I'm not sure if this is the right spot.
The 5 Filoso, another one that you mentioned, gets the blinkers on in this spot, is yet to race with that equipment. And you look at his progression. Obviously, his maiden score was pretty impressive at Saratoga. He ran pretty well, actually, at Keeneland in the Breeders' Futurity behind East Avenue and Ferocious. We haven't seen that much of this year, but look at his last out effort. I think some things worked against him. I would have liked to seen a little bit more, but I think the trip wasn't ideal. And now he'll make his first start as a 3-year-old.
Yeah, we'll see how good he is, actually. I'll just say this. Right after the Kentucky Jockey Cup was over and I went through that replay, I just made a note to find out where Filoso turns up next and maybe bet this horse. Yeah, he ran way better than it looks on paper in there. He had, in my opinion, an absolute no chance trip the way that race was run. He actually tried. Johnny tried to get him going. It was way too early, and they didn't go fast in front of him at all. He had no chance, in my opinion. I'm not sure how good he is, actually. He's 15-1 on the morning line in this race. I am using this horse, and if he really does stay a big price, I could lose some money on this horse on the win end.
The 6 in here, Naughty Rascal. He's an interesting horse, and the fact that he was awarded the win 2 starts back in the Pasco, but didn't fire in the Sam F. Davis. And he's by Roguish, who's actually a really underrated stallion at this point in his days in the breeding shed, and has had some success. But My concern with Naughty Rascal specifically is I feel like he's a little bit of a hanger. He doesn't get the job done. I obviously didn't like his performance last time out. He was chasing the pace, which maybe worked against him, but you see John Hancock and Owen Almighty, they were able to hang in there. So he has to face Owen Almighty again. I think Owen Almighty is a tougher horse than he is in that sense. And for me, it's a pretty tough sell here.
Yeah, he was maybe the only horse in the field that I couldn't make any kind of a real case for. I know he was placed first over Owen Almighty 2 starts back, but he didn't run nearly as well as Owen Almighty did in that race. And this horse was just brutal last time.
And then finally we get to the number 7 in here, Patch Adams for Brad Cox. You talked about it. The figure came really big back, in that 98 for his score at Churchill in the maiden event, 10.5 length victory. And then you look at him next time out, went off favorite in the Southwest, and I feel like it's tough to make a ton of excuses for him based on the fact that Sandman completely missed the break and still rallied for second in there. And I'll be honest, I don't necessarily love his next out performance in the Rebel. He needs to show a little bit more, but I don't know what to do with him. You said it too. He's also got to prove himself around 2 turns, and I just would have liked to seen a little bit more in the stretch at Oaklawn last out.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, that Southwest is just not a race that I like overall. Just sort of trying to avoid all of those horses wherever they turn up next. I just don't really like that race. This horse, I would say that he finished 4th in there. I would say he ran the 3rd best race, but I'm not really sure what that means. It's not like he was that good in there. He's got plenty of pedigree to stretch out, so I'm not going to worry about that. I'm just not sure how good he is, and if he's not the favorite in here, he's a really close second choice, and that's just not good enough for me. I'm gonna try to bet other horses in here.
There's so much hype behind him in the Southwest. He was not, I don't think, favored on the morning line. Maybe he was, but in my mind, I don't know if he was. And to go off at 80 cents on the dollar, pretty short to finish 4th in there. So that's the field here for the Grade 3 Tampa Bay Derby. Don't forget, it is the DRF race of the day for this Saturday, March 8th. So free past performances are available on the DRF website. We'll turn to top pick time here, and seems like we both don't necessarily love Patch Adams in this spot. And for me, he's a horse that we'll both use underneath. We land on Chancer McPatrick, and I don't want to say it's by default. I do think he has things to prove, but I do like the equipment change, Mike. I do like the way he's training. He's obviously had setbacks, but I think he's in a very good spot where he can sort of figure out what his 3-year-old campaign holds.
I agree. I just think he's a really talented horse, and so I didn't pick him by default either. I'm not sitting there suggesting I'd love to bet him at a short price in here, but I do think he's really talented, and I think this is a really good spot for him to come back as a 3-year-old. I'm not way against him in here. The other horse for me is the 5 Filoso. Again, if he's some kind of big price in here, I'm going to take a shot with him, but I think he's going to run. I think he's going to outrun his odds in this race.
The price shopping comes underneath. For you, it's Filoso in the 2nd spot. For me, it's Brodeur in the 3rd spot. Both, though, looking for Chancer McPatrick to take this year's edition of the Tampa Bay Derby. As always, best of luck.